What are the 5 key symptoms again?
Is muscle loss,
Okay, getting
fatigue,
weaker,
you
tired
get
all the time.
weaker, you're fatigued, you're not sleeping as well, your behavior's changing, you're a little more irritable, and your libido might be
Mhm.
dropping. And you don't always get all 5, you may have 2 or 3, and they start to climb, and you start to the testosterone declines.
And I think this comes up actually in conversations because I'm in my late 60s now, so is my husband, and I notice in conversation, "Oh, it's just getting older." And
Mhm.
I just hate that when people dish everything off to, "Oh, this is to be expected. You're almost 70." How do you combat that kind of mindset or that kind of attitude to have the courage and the intelligence to go and get
So
help?
diet is key. And again, as we age, we tend to eat less, or we tend to just focus on what is normal or easy for us. And both men and women, we're losing muscle. We need protein, and protein will help rebuild the loss of muscle. And if you're losing your appetite or you're just forgetting to eat because you're so busy, that's going to impact your body's ability to recover emotionally, physically, psychologically.
Welcome to the Farm Family Harmony podcast. I'm Elaine Froese, Farm Family Coach, here with another episode full of transition tips, tactics, and sometimes hard truths to get harmony on your farm.
Hi there, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Farm Family Harmony podcast. And it's my joy and delight today to introduce you to one of my speaker friends. And her name is Lisa Lounsbury. And the reason Lisa's here today is because if you've been caught by the title, we've entitled this episode 53, Dealing with Grumpy Farmers. Now, no offense is created here, but I got that quote from one of my clients who said, Elaine, I'm having a lot of trouble with my farmer husband who's not in a very good mood, and I don't understand why he just is not wanting to come to the table to do transition planning. So, Lisa, introduce yourself to our audience. And I also just want to make a note that 30% of operators in Canada are female. So, this is just an opportunity to deal with people who are going through a certain condition in life that is causing grumpiness, and you're going to help us find out why. So, Lisa, tell our listeners who you are and what's your jam.
Sure. Elaine, it's so awesome to be here to talk about this because I'm very passionate about this discussion. And it's an extension of the discussion of menopause. We're going to be talking about menopause for men, which is called Andropause. My background comes from 30 years being in the wellness industry. And 30 years ago, we weren't talking about mental health. We weren't talking about menopause. At least I wasn't,
Mhm.
being a 20-year-old something. So now fast forward to now, we are starting to have a voice. And my background in wellness has brought me to the space of talking about women's health and men's health and being specific about the longevity of our health. And as we age and the transitions that we're going through, there's little education, there's little discussion on this. And men and women go through this differently, but similarly in a way, which we'll hopefully get to. And I think the more we understand each other, the male and the female's biology as we age, we're going to have better relationships with each other, professionally, personally, and we're going to be more productive at work. And there's a lot to be said about thriving as we age, and this is what I'm excited to talk to you about it today.
Well, and I can, for those listening on the podcast, won't be able to see the title of your book, but it's behind you on the video here called Making Wellness a Priority. And in the culture of agriculture, Lisa, we have a problem with celebrating or endorsing workaholism, which typically is not good for your health. We also have a problem with people shutting down or becoming silent because things are changing in their bodies and they are not going to a doctor or physician or health practitioner to figure out why is my body changing in it. And the title Grumpy Farmer is just grumpiness could be all kinds of different things. So How does andropause, like, to share with us, like, how would someone suspect that they might be dealing with andropause? What would the symptoms look like?
Well, just start with the word grumpy. People don't wake up wanting to be grumpy.
Okay.
That's not usually a conscious decision. I'm gonna wake up and I'm just gonna be miserable today. That's not a conscious decision. It
Mm.
comes from somewhere. And when we're talking about andropause for men, if someone is consistently being grumpy, these poor men aren't doing this on purpose. They're not
Right.
just miserable human beings. There's something changing in their body and they may not realize what's happening. So it's coming out in a behavior change. So, similar to women, as we age, we lose our sex hormones. And in men, their sex hormone is testosterone. In women, we have a lot more. We're way more complicated. In men, it's the testosterone levels that are declining. Now, as men age, they lose that sex hormone very gradually. So it's not as significant a change like it is for women, but it's happening. And I think because it's happening so gradually, and men don't even understand that this is possible, then it kind of sneaks up on them, and suddenly they're starting to feel different, but they can't link it to anything. So they express their frustration in being grumpy.
Okay.
You know, and so this is what I want to talk about is the biology and how it's linking to the behavior of men and their longevity.
Okay. So how do they start realizing or recognizing that there's hope for things to be better and to be well?
First of all, it's acknowledging this could be happening, and it probably is happening to them. So they could live their lives thinking, well, it's not going to happen to me, or I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me.
Mm.
This is very typical, and you can't avoid it. You don't avoid puberty. You don't avoid andropause. And so, the decline in testosterone typically starts around 40 for men. But it's like I said, it's very gradual. So it's hard to know if this is what's happening. And as you get into your 50s, and it just slowly starts to decline. And so symptoms range from very similar to aging symptoms. And that's why sometimes it goes misdiagnosed is fatigue,
Mhm.
loss of muscle mass, changing in sleep patterns, behavior changes, and even changes in libido. Those are the 5 biggest changes or biggest symptoms that men should look out for and consider it could be because of the loss of testosterone. And I think there's also a stigma around that. Like who wants to admit they're losing testosterone if you're a man? I'm just assuming.
Mhm.
I think there's a little bit of fear and there's that stigma. So men might hide those symptoms or just push through it. And it comes out as anger and being grumpiness.
So, can I just go and run somewhere and pump testosterone into my aging husband, or what do you do when you realize that this is happening? Is there a test or something you can do with your doctor? How do you validate the fact that this is happening?
Well, there's 2 things that can potentially be done. So this has to be under the control of a healthcare practitioner. You can't just go to the store and
Yeah.
buy testosterone in Canada. So once a man is frustrated and ready to go and talk to the doctor, that's the hardest part is get someone
Yeah.
to actually reach out.
Admit that they need to ask for help.
Yeah, and
Good
that
thing.
which is a good thing, but very hard for many men is to get to that point where they're willing to ask for help. So you can go and ask for help, see your healthcare practitioner will hopefully sit down and listen to your symptoms first. Let's talk about your symptoms. So it's like a clinical diagnosis. And they may bring up those 5 symptoms. But
Can you
also
say them again, Lisa? Just say them again. Someone is
sure.
driving a tractor, listening to this, or out working with the cows. What are the 5 key symptoms again?
Is muscle loss,
Okay. Getting
fatigue,
weaker, tired all
getting
the time.
weaker, you're fatigued, you're not sleeping as well, your behavior's changing, you're a little more irritable, and your libido might be
Mhm.
dropping. And you don't always get all 5, you may have 2 or 3, and they start to climb, and you start to as the testosterone declines.
And I think this comes up actually in conversations because I'm in my late 60s now. So is my husband. And I notice in conversation, oh, it's just getting older. And
Mhm.
I just hate that when people dish everything off to, oh, this is to be expected. You're almost 70. How do you combat that kind of mindset or that kind of attitude to have the courage and the intelligence to go and get help?
A lot of people will just settle. This is just my legacy. I'm just,
Lights work.
yeah. But as a wellness coach, and for me personally, I'm not prepared to just say, well, this is my future. I'm just going to slowly lose my ability to enjoy life.
Okay.
So
But
when an individual has the ambition to want to be their best and realize there is hope, and they do not have to just settle for being tired and not enjoying life. 80-year-olds enjoy lives.
right.
I just hiked through Spain,
Oh, did you
which
do
was I
Camino?
did the Camino.
Oh, okay. I call it the El Camino. That's a car. Sorry.
Yeah,
My
El Camino.
mother-in-law used to have that car. Okay, it's called the Camino.
It's called the Camino, and I've done a lot of other big hikes, and I always come across folks in their 70s and 80s hiking alongside me. They
Mm.
have such vitality. They're thriving. So I know it's possible, and it's never too late to start to feel your best. So when an individual realizes this does not have to be their status quo, they need to go and seek out what's next for me. How can I make myself a priority, and what do I need to get to the next level? And so for a man who might be experiencing andropause, which is a biological transition that they can't ignore,
Mhm.
once they're willing to, share their symptoms and consider it's not just aging. You
It's the
can't
body
stop
changing.
aging, but you can prevent the symptoms from getting worse. And that comes from maybe testosterone hormone replacement therapy. So it's testosterone replacement therapy. So TR, TRT.
There you go.
So if you go to a doctor, if this gentleman goes to the doctor and says, listen, I have these symptoms, and if the doctor understands andropause, which sometimes is not the case, we have to advocate for ourselves. There is a blood test. It's a simple blood test. You get your testosterone checked.
Mhm.
And then you can see where the levels are. And a good doctor will know if this individual's testosterone is declining a little bit too much, where maybe he does need replacement. So I used my husband as a guinea pig last winter,
Wow, okay.
and he was quite willing. So he's
Now
62, and he was quite willing to go get blood work, and he was quite willing to go see a health practitioner, and he was quite willing to receive testosterone replacement therapy. So it's actually much easier for a man to go through these channels and start to recover and start to replace the lost hormone than a woman.
they're not as complex as we are.
Exactly. It's an easier diagnosis, it's an easier process. And it's not really necessary all the time to receive any replacement. The best the best method is to identify the symptoms, notice them, acknowledge them, validate them, and then start moving towards supporting them.
Mhm. What other things can you do besides the TRT treatment?
Great question. So there are a lot of things. So if it's muscle mass that someone's noticing, and if you just look at an aging man, you'll notice the muscle loss. You'll see it. There's a typical look that men as they age, and you'll notice their biceps getting a little bit weaker, their triceps and their pectorals. They start to droop and they start to look smaller.
Mm.
Resistance training, build the muscle back up. Start with free weights, start doing, the good old fashioned push ups, and building natural resistance into your lifestyle will bring some of that muscle loss back, because as you lose muscle loss, you're at risk of harm, you're at risk of injury. And if you're a farmer, I haven't personally done any farming, but I've watched. It's very physical, isn't it, Elaine?
Well, and not as much as it used to be, unfortunately, because there's a lot of mechanism now. But yes, it's still. I mean, there's days when my husband walks 14,000 steps
Mm,
around
okay.
the yard, but the muscle loss and the strength loss is really important to be considered. And I'm just thinking of a friend of mine. His name is Rudy. He's passed now, but even when he was 80, I think he did 100 push-ups a day, and he would walk or jog even in minus 30, like with his overalls on, his insulated
Mhm,
coveralls. And so I think it's also important what you're saying, Lisa, is about mindset too, about not settling for your body changing.
mhm.
Yeah.
And I've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it. These folks who just you can tell they've just given up.
Yeah.
I've been told I'm aging, so this is my reality. But it doesn't
So,
have to be.
so one of the other ways to help is as you say through strength training and
Yep.
resistance training. So throwing a few more hay bales or seed bags or
Yes.
carrying grandchildren around. I don't know, whatever is going to give you some resistance. What about diet?
So diet is key. And again, as we age, we tend to eat less, or we tend to just focus on what is normal or easy for us. And both men and women, we're losing muscle. We need protein, and protein will help rebuild the loss of muscle. And if you're losing your appetite or you're just forgetting to eat because you're so busy, that's going to impact your body's ability to recover emotionally, physically, psychologically. So bringing protein up, healthy proteins up into your diet is key, as long as you're also managing the fiber intake. So there's a little bit of nutrition that you have to really, a science that you really have to understand. But to keep it simple, eat as much protein as you can and match it with some fiber so that the body
Yeah,
has.
I have to tell you this story that I saw on Mary Pat Sauce's Instagram feed, I think. But there was a farmer who took ramen noodles and water to the field in a Ziploc bag,
Oh my.
and he puts it on the window of his machine because he's in an air-conditioned cab for like 10, 12 hours a day or whatever he's doing or she's doing, and lets the heat of the sun cook the ramen noodles and then eats the ramen noodles. That's probably not the best nutrition, I'm guessing. But what you need to know, Lisa, is that our combines now come with fridges, and they also can have a plug-in oven, which some people take a little freezer meal that they've made and stick it in this little cooker thing. I think they can buy at Canadian Tire, and that's what they eat for supper.
Wow.
So you have the capacity to have protein shakes, smoothies, and all kinds of other hard cooked eggs,
Well,
fish, all kinds of beef jerky, good cheese, good protein sources in your fridge, in your vehicle while you're working as a farmer.
absolutely.
So what are your favorite sources of protein? Because you're totally on the top of your game with this.
Well, lean proteins are great. So, and I'm thinking, Elaine, your folks will have access to lean proteins, probably the best lean proteins anybody can get.
Mm.
So for me as a female, I'm not, or maybe it doesn't matter if I'm a female or not, but I do struggle to eat a lot of meat. So I supplement with the Greek yogurts, lentils and beans and nuts and seeds. I try and get as much fish and chicken's good, turkey's good. I eat pork occasionally, beef.
Yeah. Well,
Looking
like
at
beef producers are going to say, eat more grass-fed beef. I can hear them saying that right now.
absolutely, and that's great. That's great. It
Mm.
it has there's a stigma around red meat that red meat causes cardiovascular problems. There's also science that says that it supports your hormones and your
Well, it's also a nutrient-dense food.
yeah. So I guess it's a decision your listeners will have to make, but
Well, and if they're producers, they have a freezer full of beef, so they've got access to good protein.
that's awesome. And it doesn't have to be a lot. You don't have to, it doesn't have to look like a roast on your plate, but
Mm.
usually the size of your fist is usually the portion size. And mirroring it with healthy vegetables. And the funny thing is, most people know what they should eat. It's not rocket science. It's not new information. It's just eating plant-based foods and clean meats and proteins. And of course, water.
Yeah.
Water needs to be part of that diet to allow everything to metabolize and flush out. And so so resistance training and your nutrition are the top two things that you need to really make a priority.
So, on a percentage basis, Lisa, does everybody go through andropause, or their
Yeah.
symptoms vary?
So every human loses their sex hormones.
Okay.
100%. It's like 100% of humans go through puberty.
Right.
It's the same biological transition. Symptoms though vary. Not all people lose the same amount of their sex hormones at the same rate or even at the same time. Sometimes it's hereditary. Sometimes it's linked to other illnesses. There's a lot of things that can change how this impacts somebody. So we can't put everybody in the same box. But it comes back to reminding our men that if they are not feeling well, this doesn't have to be their norm.
Right. And they don't have to
Ours.
settle.
They don't have to settle. And because it impacts relationships as well. So when someone's not feeling well, they don't have the capacity to love as much or to be as patient or to
Or
be as
gentle or
or
kind.
yes.
Mm.
And so when someone is no longer able to be gentle or kind, they're not choosing that behavior. The behavior is coming from they're uncomfortable psychologically, physically, socially. There's something driving that behavior. And they have to realize that it doesn't have to be that way.
So, how does the discussion we're having about dealing with grumpy farmers connect to also destigmatizing mental illness? The other thought I have is when you start feeling lousy for 5 or 6 years and don't do anything about it and settle, I also suspect that something like circumstantial depression can also set in.
Absolutely. Now, I'm a mental health educator as well, and I work primarily with men in the mining industries.
Wow.
And the barriers are we're breaking it down. We're breaking down the stigma. Men are starting to feel more comfortable speaking. Younger men are more comfortable than older men because it's just not part of their childhood, in which we're trying to break that chain. So we have to give folks that are afraid to talk about their mental health the space and the compassion and the empathy to know that this is okay. It's not okay to feel like crap, but it's okay
Yes.
to express that you feel like crap because that's when the recovery, that's when the transition starts. Pacify, pack it down, you pretend it's not happening is not serving anybody until someone can no longer cope.
Mhm.
And then the worst case scenario could happen where someone feels like, why bother? There's no purpose. Why should I live any longer? We don't
And
want to get that far.
so you live not far from Sudbury, Ontario, and your niche, so to speak, is helping a lot of folks in the mining industry, which has parallels to the farming industry. Long hours, hard work, lots of physicality. Just pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of thinking, which of course is not healthy or helpful. But my observation in agriculture too, which makes me happy, is that more men and women are reaching out to have counseling and to deal with, um, trauma or things that are happening in the family dynamic that they need to have new coping skills with. And so that to me is encouraging. I myself, Lisa, am a survivor of postpartum depression. I was very ill 41 years ago when I gave birth to our daughter and spent most of 1984 in a psych ward and had 23 shock treatments. And it was the shock treatments, the ECTs, electroconvulsive therapy, that actually helped rewire and rearrange my brain to help me get better. And so when I'm speaking, I want other farm families to know whatever your journey of wellness is, it's always a good idea not to suffer alone and to reach out for help. So one of the resources that you have sitting behind you there is your book, Making Wellness a Priority. So tell us about your book. What does that involve?
Oh, Elaine, thanks for letting me talk about it.
Oh, absolutely.
When I wrote this book, it took me 10 years to write this book, for starters, because I wasn't sure what I was going to share was going to impact folks. Fast forward to 10 years, I published the book last year. My biggest advocates of my book have been men in their 40s and 50s.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah. Like, I knew I was gonna be speaking to females. I knew the woman that I was writing for would get it, or I was hoping anyways. I had no idea that the men were actually gonna be the biggest, um, getting the biggest response from
You're
men.
champions.
Yes, they're champions. Thank you for filling the gap there. And because they haven't been given the opportunity to think what's possible and to think about their future selves. And because in my book, I also have testimonials of people I've worked with, both men and women in different stages of their lives. So there's a lot of impact and abilities to connect with the message of why should I care about my health? Why is this important? What are the strategies? Where's the hope? And what's the purpose of this? And so the book takes you through that journey, and I'm just so grateful that men are listening and reading the book and thinking about their own mortality and their roles as fathers, as husbands, as lovers, as partners, as grandparents, as brothers,
And business people.
and business people and farmers. We all require the same care for ourselves. I don't care which industry you work in, which gender you are, your age. It starts with taking care of yourself first so you could, you know, show up for others.
Well, and it's also a gift to your family, Lisa, because the amount of time it takes to care for an unwell person is, it can be exponential as you get older. And I remember the day our doctor's wonderful. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Nell. When we go afar to have other treatments, people say, "Is he for real?" And I go, "Yes, he's wonderful." And he's a very caring, patient man, and he gets people results quickly. But one day he leaned across the desk when my husband and I were there together, and he said, "Look, you two," and this is when we were 60. He said, "In my practice, I see things taking a significant shift when people turn 75. So that means you have 15 good years left. So start making some differences now and start having some fun and some time off." And we were sitting in front of him for insurance reasons, and we did. We went to New Zealand for a month, and that was great because we had the capacity and an opportunity to do that, to see friends in New Zealand. And I don't want to speak ill into people's future that, your life's going to fall apart at 75. But he's a doctor, he's a medical practitioner, and he's seen trends, right? And this other hormone specialist that I was seeing because of my thyroid, she said, "Elaine, I want you to go out and buy the book, What Makes Olga Run." And so there's a woman, I don't remember her last name properly. I think it's like Costello, but she was a Ukrainian woman from Saskatchewan, Lisa, who started running when she was 77. And she also had a huge garden. And so she was very active, but she decided to be more active when she was in her mid 70s. And then at her funeral, when she was like 96 or 7, I think she passed, she had 600 medals from being in seniors masters races. And the people who attended her funeral all went home with one of Olga's running medals. Can you imagine? Like that's that's just, it's an incredible story because just to see that she gave herself 20 more years, and 77 to 97 about, by really making her wellness a priority. So I think that's a great story to think about when we, particularly if I know you're likely not on the Facebook threads of Farm Women's Support Group or whatever, but I can't read them because there's always so much frustration and a lot of people jump in to help. But talk does not cook rice, Lisa. But we have to act. And tell, just before, as we wrap up, tell our listeners too about what you did during the pandemic to help people online and what that resulted in.
I have a background in fitness as well. And so, as a fitness instructor and personal trainer, I wasn't able to go to the gyms and teach yoga or teach resistance training like everybody else. So, I went online like everybody did, and I started to offer fitness programs virtually. And I kept those recordings because I knew it was good content.
Mm.
I wanted to reuse that content, and I had great feedback from the participants that joined in. And I'm a very compassionate instructor, so it's not intimidating how I teach, and I'm very conscious of safety, and so I was able to do that virtually and not fear that I was going to hurt anybody. I knew I was going to empower and strengthen my folks. So that's all online now in an academy. I have a New Day Wellness Academy where you can now access those on demand. And it reaches folks that may not feel comfortable going to a gym or feel intimidated. So it's very doable for anyone wanting to start or in the middle of their journey.
So reachable, my friend, for those of us who live miles and miles and
Yeah,
miles away from said gym.
for
So
sure.
pay for that. So as long as we have a decent internet connection, we can get your online academy. So how do
Absolutely.
people find you, Lisa?
Oh, you can find me anywhere. So you can find me at newdaywellness.ca. That's my website. Once you get in there, you can find me anywhere. But I am the Wellness Lady on Instagram. I'm
Okay.
on YouTube, Lisa Lounsbury, the regular threads, LinkedIn and Twitter. But Elaine, do I have a second to share a really cool story?
Yes,
30
absolutely.
second story. My husband and I applied for life insurance, and maybe this will be a motivator. So my
Mhm.
husband and I applied for life insurance just a month ago because we needed something to cover this new house we built. My husband's 62, I'm 58. So my medical health questionnaire was just online and I answered all the questions. And I'm quite healthy. I've taken care of my health my whole life. So I was
You practice what you preach there, girl.
yeah. Good thing, right? So my medical survey was pretty good, and I submitted that. My husband had to get more testing done, so a nurse had to come to the house, do blood work, check his weight, ask him a gazillion questions because he was over 60. And so she did her thing, and we've been waiting for weeks for the results from the underwriter. So yesterday, we got the results. And
Okay.
the results between the two of us were so good that they reduced the premiums we were quoted for. And my financial planner, who is responsible for setting all this up, said, Lisa, this has never happened. We've never had a couple's premiums drop after their medical questionnaire and surveys were done. You folks are doing something right. And I'm like, well, if that's not a motivator, find something else because
Yes.
I was so proud of not only myself, but my husband too, for maintaining our health and making it a priority for our future grandchildren if that ever happens. And our lives together. And we are going to be hiking the Camino next year together.
Oh, good.
And we are going to meet folks in their 60s and 70s and 80s. And I want to be alongside of those folks as they're aging and thriving. So I hope your listeners will find the strength or become empowered to know that the way they feel now, if they're feeling crappy, it does not have to be that way.
Well, I just want to say you're a gift to me because listeners may notice in my voice I'm on day 13 of a cold that's just not resisting and getting out of my body right now. And I want to celebrate the fact that you also mentioned the word hope, Lisa. And in Proverbs, it says, a hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is like a tree of life. And I've used that many times in farm transition coaching because many farm families have lost that sense of hope of finding certainty for their business futures through equity building and becoming part of a stakeholder or shareholder in a farm business. But that's also complicated with the layer of mom or dad or son or daughter or any family member not being well. And so making wellness a priority is a great thing for us to be talking about. Podcast is uh, coming out in the middle of October. This is the time of year when farmers are really full out with harvesting and getting things put in the bin for winter and managing their livestock. And so I think this is a very timely conversation. So I just want to thank you for what you do and for your positivity and for your joy and for your practicalness in looking at this as a whole kind of priority for all of us to understand that we don't have to settle. And that's a great theme to end on. So thank you so much for your time today. And I encourage you as listeners just to drop into the show notes. We'll have all of the links to Lisa's resources there for you. And you could make my heart sing as a listener by sharing this far and wide, and also just popping into my farmfamilycoach.com website and just telling us what a difference this podcast has made to you. Because I know there is one woman, Lisa, who's running through the forest and hiking in BC while she's listening to this podcast, because she told me that I keep her company while she's running. So all of you out there, stay well and stay safe, and check out Lisa's book, Making Wellness a Priority. And I am definitely going to be subscribing to her online academy, because I used to have a personal trainer too during the pandemic. And again, it's routine and habits that are going to make us better. So thanks so much for joining us today. It's been delightful to have you, Lisa.
You're so welcome, Elaine.
Yeah, and send pictures of the Camino. That's going to be
Okay. Okay.
okay. Bye for now. Hi, folks. One thing I just want to mention to you, it's October and our cart will soon be closing at the end of this month. So if you want to join our membership site to get group coaching 3 times a month from myself and our team of coaches, you have to act now. So please go to farmfamilycoach.com and sign up for the membership. The price of admission is very reasonable, and also you become part of the community that is also working to get the table for farm transition. So don't delay, act today, and I hope to see you on Tuesdays in our membership site. Do it now.